Hi, we're Oxygen Conservation, and this is the Shoe Room Sessions. Lyall, welcome to the Shoe Room.
Thank you, Rich.
Can you tell people who you are and what you do?
So I'm Lyall, and I am the estate manager for Esgair Arth.
Excellent. So before we recorded your episode, we sent a survey out to the whole team of who hadn't we recorded the podcast of and whose story did they want to hear? And you literally were the highest vote winner across the board. So by popular demand, you are here for your podcast.
I am. I looks of it.
Can you take us through your career content page? So where did you grow up through to how did you find OC and how have you found your time with us so far?
So I was born in Luton, moved to Wales when I was about 6 or 7. Obviously went to school in Wales, learned the Welsh language, and then through school kind of ended up on a woodland project from about 14 years old. So practicing sustainable woodland management.
So was that common at the school? Did they regularly do that or?
No, I mean, do you want the truth then?
Yeah.
So I used to get in quite a bit of trouble at school. So I'd be put on projects. So I was only in school 2 days a week. I'd spend 3 days a week out. So I'd done welding, sustainable wood management, and my Duke of Edinburgh.
And was it that school just wasn't the right environment for you? It just didn't work?
That's exactly what it was, yeah. Because I mean, I later went on to college and university, so got that back. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Turned that negative into a positive. You know, it taught me a lot about the ecosystems, habitats, general woodland management.
And probably a lot about you, the person?
Me as a person too, yeah. I mean, as I say, so we'd be felling trees with axes. And that was exactly what I needed, a lot of physical exertion, you know. So I'd exert a lot of that anger and energy into that. By the end of it...
Did you feel angry at the time?
Yeah.
I remember being, so I've said very similar, like, as a teenage boy, I was just so fucking angry all the time. And I think for people who haven't felt that way, it seems crazy to even describe it, but I just remember my entire teenage years just being angry about everything. So I totally get that need to, mine was gym and started lifting weights and various sport and things, but that need to release it and exert it was so cathartic, I think.
No, absolutely. You know, and I think it comes from learning how to regulate that too. You know, you're learning yourself at that point. There's a lot of hormonal change, so you learn how to regulate. You learn the way of the world. But yeah, from that, met a guy called Ben Gray, who was absolutely imperative to this whole journey. You know, without him, I wouldn't be here. I definitely wouldn't. So
does he know the role he's played in your?
Yeah, I've told him once or twice. Yeah,
nice. That's important.
And he's humble enough not to, you know, get too big-headed about it if you want. But yeah, from there, carried on doing that. Ended up leaving school, so that project ended. But he kept me on for another 2 years. So I kind of become a mentor to the boys that were coming back through that, which was awesome. So being able to, you know, develop.
Did that make you feel proud?
In a way, yeah. In a way, when you hear the success stories, definitely. So like success is definitely a celebration. You know, a lot of them don't end up successful as such. So.
And did you see elements about them that reminded you of a younger you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And which is why, you know, it helped. Like Ben was kind of similar to that when he was younger, so that helped me, and then that kind of just carries on, right? But yeah, left there, went to college, studied countryside management and conservation. Left college, went to Pembrokeshire.
When you went to college, was that an easy, comfortable fit already, or did you have to? I can imagine it might have been a scary thing, thinking, well, school didn't work for me. Is college going to?
No, that was the point. That was the challenge, right? That was, you know, proving to myself and also everybody else that always said, you're not going to do it. So I thought, well, yeah, now's the time to start. I'll go and do it now. So I did that. Went back into practical work, ended up doing an apprenticeship at Pembrokeshire National Coast, where I got my chainsaw license and, you know, strimmer license and lots of different licenses and training courses. So we did that, and then finished that, and then found out my partner was pregnant with my first son, which is where I really had to start knuckling down, right? That was like massive, right, I'm growing up now.
And that mentally felt like a switch to you, did it?
Yeah, that changed everything. Yeah, all of a sudden life is no longer about you, right? You are now providing, you're a breadwinner, you know, got to grow up. So that's where I went to university. You know, that was multi-pronged essentially. So one, it was developing the skills that I'd learned, you put in a lot of theoretical knowledge to the practical element that I'd learned, but also it was financial stability. So it was 3 years of this is what we get, you know, and I could work around that as well. It was an organised schedule so that I could carry on doing the tree works. I'd now got my chainsaw license, so it was much groundwork.
Must have been a full-on period doing education and family and work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it keeps you busy, right? That's the point. It keeps you busy. It keeps you in that zone. So keeps you out of trouble. So you carry on doing that. So yeah, finished university, came out of university, and started landscape gardening. So in West Wales, it's very difficult. So you either work in a bar, a shop, or you learn a trade, essentially. And I didn't want to do the first two, so I thought I'll go and apply myself to a trade.
And it sounds like the being outside from an early age had been a really important thing for you.
Yeah. I mean, one, you're in nature. That's the beauty of West Wales, right? It's so rural that if you don't appreciate that, you're probably in the wrong place. So it was a huge element of that.
That's an interesting point, right? Because so many people, I think, fight that rather than embracing what the place gives you in rural communities. People are like, no, I want it to be more like a city. Well, then go to a city.
Exactly.
Appreciate what you've got for what it is and let it be brilliant at that rather than try and make it something it's not.
Exactly. I mean, I always had the chance to go back to Luton. So my grandparents lived there until about 10 years ago, and I've still got a lot of family there. So do go back quite a lot, but it's always better for me to live in the countryside and visit that rather than vice versa. So exactly that. So yeah, got into landscaping, thought I needed to learn a trade essentially. So I did that for a couple of years. And
hard work?
Yeah, great. It was great though. Again, physical exertion. So you'd always fit, go to the gym afterwards, and good day's work, right? And you felt strong. But then it started to get to a point that at 23, 24, it's like, I'm starting to break down. You can start to feel your body already, not enjoying it. So
for people that haven't, so I had a lot of manual work all through school and uni. And for people, and my dad was a builder, and in his 40s and 50s, his wrists and elbows and knees were shot. And I think people who haven't had manual jobs, they might do a little bit of something, volunteering or things like that. They don't realise the accumulation. But already a few summers or a few years, you can feel it, right? You start carrying the knocks and the injuries, and it aches the next day. And
Exactly that. And it's wet a lot, right?
Yeah.
So in Wales, it rains a lot. So you haven't really got a choice. You've got to get out there or you don't get paid.
Yeah.
So you get out there, and again, because it rains a lot, you weren't getting 5 days a week work, and I would have been happier if it was that. So end up looking for a part-time job, so, just something to supplement that. So if I could just do 2 jobs. So every day I also wasn't shy from changing my career as well. I thought I've got all this theoretical, all this practical behind me. I can implement that quite well. And so every day it was go home, conservation jobs. And there was a couple that come up with different organisations, applied for 1, maybe 2, didn't get them. I knew I wasn't going to get them. It was shooting way above what I was, but why not try?
Why did you think you weren't going to get them?
Because they were quite senior roles, and I hadn't got that practical experience in that particular department, if you like. So, but shoot for the stars, right? Why not? And it never come to fruition. So that was fine. And then, one day, auction conservation, there it was. And I thought, what's this? I'll definitely have a look at this. Look at the, I think at that point, it was the Steve Jobs kind of advert still. Yeah. So it was calling all the rebels, misfits, square pegs and round holes, whatever it was. And I thought, this is talking to me. This is where I've come from that point. So I was like, right, definitely got to go for this. And the further I got through the application, I put hours into it, hours and hours, and refining it. And it was just like getting better and better. And I was like, I love this. I want this. At that point, it was the want to, I've never wanted something so much. So then I thought, right, go on to the portfolio. Let's have a look, see if we can find some keywords, some trigger words, and Esgair Arth was on there. I thought, no, 6 miles away from my house. As I just mentioned, it doesn't happen, right? I thought, wow, this is, I don't really believe in stuff, but it felt like the stars were aligning kind of thing. So I was like, okay, let's really go for this. So do that, get the application in, get the receipt, the application had been submitted.
So just on that advert, so when I first came up with that advert, because I've felt like that square peg in a round hole, definitely a rebel, definitely someone who wants to change things. When I spoke to quite a traditional HR person on it, they literally told me, you cannot use that advert. It's offensive, it's inappropriate. And I was like, who's it inappropriate? Oh, it's offensive against misfits and rebels. And I'm like, but I'm asking them to come. How is it? And they just didn't get it in the context. But it was trying to do exactly what it did for you. It was trying to speak to the people
That's so interesting because that first sentence was the thing that captured me.
The amount of people that. Yes. So we always do the playful job titles or adverts and things.
Absolutely.
Without doubt, 1 or 2 people every time says, you can't do that, it's silly, you definitely shouldn't do it. And the people like you that we've found with those different approaches are just amazing. And I'm never going to change it because come and be a conservation person. It's just boring. It just doesn't jump off the page. It doesn't create the excitement that you've just described. So I'm so glad it had the effect it was meant to.
No, and it absolutely did, yeah. And so, I got the receipt of for the application. I think it was a couple of days later, got asked for an interview. I thought, okay, now we're going somewhere. And
who did you meet to start with?
Anna and Dan.
Right, okay.
So it was Anna and Dan that done my initial interview. And I come away from that, and I'm really not like this, but I came away from it, I thought, I done well. I'm going to get somewhere with this. I can feel it.
They both loved you straight away. So I remember them coming off the phone going, yeah, this guy's brilliant.
Really? That's nice.
Because they both wanted you in their respective parts of the business. So there was a bit of a back and forward, like who's going to get Lyall.
That's nice. It's nice to hear down the line. So then got invited to the intern day. I think it was Leon at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Warnacourt wasn't part of the portfolio. So get invited to Leon. Find out there's going to be, Abby, Esme, and whoever else attended that day. And I thought, okay, that's cool. Got the date through, 19th of January. It's my son's 7th birthday. I thought, it's a bit of a mixed bag, but I want this so much. It's going to have to happen. So, completely committed to that. And I was actually on the way to my parents' house, and I got a message from a partner on the way back. She's like, Anna's just rung you. Can you give her a call back ASAP, please? I was like, absolutely fine. Gave Anna a call, and she's like, well, Rich and Dan are coming down to West Wales. How would you like to meet them on the 17th? I was like seriously? It was just working out the whole way. So we did, and I guess the rest is history, right?
It is. Yeah, amazing story. So so how long have you been with us now?
February last year, so what's that, year, 8 months?
18 months, wow. Okay, and what things are as you expected? So when you came in from the outside, what you thought you were getting, is the company what you thought you were joining and what you were coming?
Yeah, at that point, definitely. I mean, it's developed a lot since then, right? Like, there's been a lot more employees, a lot more people come in the door, and it's amazing how everybody fits into that as well, though, right? Like, that's definitely something, like, there is a culture. And I can't, we get asked this question quite regularly by Andrew, don't we? And I can never put my finger on quite what it is, but there's just something here that's just amazing. And in the grand scheme of things, yeah, absolutely. It is what I expected, probably more as well.
Nice, I love it. Who do you work the most with and closest with in the team?
I mean, Rowan now. Obviously, you've employed Rowan. But before that, Dan. Dan regularly calls me. He'll be a day-to-day. Anything I'm stuck with, give Dan a text, a message, or WhatsApp, whatever it may be. So, yeah, Dan.
And in the last year, you've become a line manager as well. Now we've welcomed Rowan.
I have, yeah.
So say a little bit about that project and what she's working on.
Yeah, so that is the Upstream Thinking project, the initiative to start trying to manage INS across the whole Arth catchment.
Explain to people what INS are.
Invasive non-native species, so essentially a species that is brought in to a certain environment, doesn't necessarily belong there, and kind of takes over.
So some examples would be?
Himalayan balsam and Japanese knotweed are the ones that we're focusing on right now.
Yeah, cool. So when did she join us?
She joined us August, I want to say, late July, August. So
and how does it feel going? Does it feel like being that mentor again in like your previous life?
Different, okay. More professional, way more professional. Before it was teenage boys, and now we're in an environment where we're really trying to make a difference. Like, that guy had his business, and we're trying to make that function. This is much bigger, right? It's on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, you've got a member of a team who's got a PhD in ecology,
which is insane, right?
Yeah, the level and caliber of people we attract through the intern process is. Not the Rowan intern, but through the intern process is breathtaking. So your year, I think and if I remember rightly, we didn't even have a website when we went live with that. And there was no, we did.
Yeah, you
just
did.
Got a website. But we had like 100 applicants for that, and then 500 last year, and we're due to get more than 1,000 this year, which is super, super exciting.
Yeah, that competition is massive, right?
Yeah.
It's getting bigger and bigger. I mean, I think it's a testament to that first year, though. I mean, obviously, Abby and Esme are still here too.
Yeah.
So it's like 75% success out of the 4 that joined, right? And now, that competition just gets bigger and bigger, which is fantastic.
Awesome. Tell people a little bit about Esgair Arth.
So Esgair Arth, 301 acres, absolutely beautiful. We've got stunning sea views. We've got 58 acres of triple SI. We've just planted 133 acres of new woodland, which is incredible. I mean, I can go more in depth for that as well. And then there's about 100 acres that's kind of left to natural regeneration, if you like. So the idea is, my first task was to remove the legacy infrastructure of the farming. So take about 2.5 kilometres of fencing.
And that was literally choking the triple SI, wasn't it? It was like constraining it, and you had a divide between them.
It was redundant fencing, we didn't have any animals on there anymore, and it was breaking down. And once we started to dig it out, what transpired was that there was layers and layers and layers of old farming equipment. So you're talking bits of caravan, bits of metal, sheep dips with, horrible chemicals in there. And so removing that to allow that triple SI to essentially naturally regenerate into that open area.
Nice. And somewhere in the region of 100,000 trees planted?
Yeah, 90,000 trees, which I read a report the other day, actually, which was made by the BBC. So Wales only planted 650 hectares of woodland last year, which was 12% of its target. So done a bit of quick maths on that. and we planted 133, so 54 hectares, which works out to about 12%, I think.
Of the entire planting in Wales?
Of the entire plant in Wales. So that we contribute about 8% to that 12%, which works out to about 1 in every 12 trees, assuming that they planted at the same density that we did.
Wow. So tell us about that process. How, if someone wants to go from an empty bare field like you did, how do you get a woodland in the ground? What does it take?
I mean, the first step was employing a woodland consultant.
Yeah.
So that's mandatory in Wales. You have to do that. And we found Phil, which was absolutely, again, amazing. Phil is a great guy. So
and he just looks like a woodland consultant,
absolutely,
right? Like,
he does.
Happy in the woods.
It really, really is as well. You know, the more conversations I have with him, that transpires more and more.
I think that's what's been beautiful is each of the different places we've worked in, we've been able to find those local specialists who understand independently the best type of woodland design, the best restoration program we can put together. Working with those experts locally has been such a pleasure across the portfolio.
Oh, no, big time. Yeah, massively. I mean, and that goes for everyone that does the surveys too, right? So, yeah, you meet some fantastic people that are at the top of their game, the top of their knowledge, and try and like absorb.
I think people just think you can rock up and just go, right, I'm going to plant trees here. No. They don't realise the degree to work and time. And so you mentioned surveys. What type of surveys would we have done?
So we've done breeding bird surveys. We've done lichen surveys, invert surveys, veteran tree surveys, wild service tree surveys.
Yeah, because you've got some special trees there, right?
We have got special trees there, yeah. So wild service trees, there's only 2 recorded sites in the whole of Ceredigion, so it's rare across the whole of the UK, but not necessarily as you go into mainland Europe. But yeah, the wild service trees, as I say, 2 recorded sites in Wales, in Ceredigion, sorry, and we're one of them, and we've got 6 colonies. I mean, and how that came about was a really good story as well. So we managed to obtain a map through NRW from a guy called Arthur Chater. So for people that don't know, like, he's an absolute don in his field, right? So he used to walk around in the 60s to 70s and before GPS ever existed, and would literally survey the whole county. So he did that, and he wrote a book called The Flora of Cardiganshire, and it documented that there were wild service tree colonies in our woodland. And so, yeah, we, with the help of the Wildlife Trust, we decided we'd go and look for that. Go and look for them. And yeah, quite a funny story actually. So we spent about 3 hours in the morning and didn't come across one. And it got to the point it was like, oh, they're not here anymore. You know, it's 50, 60 years. There's been so many storms, so many big trees. There's been so much work done in this woods.
Hard farming on it as well. Yeah, it's cleared a lot of stuff.
They're obviously not here anymore. Yeah. So we sit down for lunch. We all have a chat. A bit disheartened, to be honest with you. And yeah, pack up the lunch, walk for about 30 seconds and found our first one, which was absolutely awesome. So I've never seen one before, ever, in its natural environment, if you want to call it that, which was incredible. And yeah, the further we got in, the more and more we found. They're suckering as well, so they've seeded and they're regenerating themselves, which is fantastic.
That's amazing. So back to the woodland restoration project and the planting of trees. So there was a sequencing issue, right, in terms of when we had to order trees hitting the season when they need to be planted, them arriving, and you couldn't plant them straight away?
Yeah, exactly that. So going back to the report, so we employed a woodland consultant, and then you basically do your own kind of independent assessment. So you go across the site, you have a look at the site, and you decide what areas are wet, what areas are dry, have a look at the soils that are there, what trees will be supported by that environment. Then you write your expression of interest to NRW. You kind of give them an outlay of your species mix and the density that you want to plant at.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. So the type of tree, the density, the seed sourcing, the origin of the species, all that stuff takes care and attention, right? It's not just we're putting some trees somewhere.
No, exactly. I mean, and you know, a common misconception that people have when you speak to them is that they always think we're forestry or forestry commission, which is absolutely not what we're doing here. So, you know, it goes back to a lot of the lines that you say, that biodiversity is the heart of what we do. And I kind of use that argument a lot. So you have 2 types of planting style, which is 1,600 stems per hectare or 2.41 acres, which is a biodiversity plant, or you can plant 2,200 trees, which is known as a carbon plant. So that's a lot denser. So with the biodiversity plant that we chose to do, or the plant technique that we chose, was that you have to keep 15% open ground. The idea behind that is that you kind of conserve the habitats that already do exist, and you try to uplift them too. So for example, we've got a lot of blackthorn in the hedgerows. We left 5 metre buffers from there. The blackthorn will naturally encroach into them areas and give you successive growth years. So what happens then is you support different invert species.
I think the really important part on the business side of that is we are literally making a choice that's better for the environment today, but worse for the bottom line. So people who think that any business is just pursuing carbon credits, if we were doing that, we would plant the maximum stems per acre. And by us choosing this, we are literally putting the environment and people first in what we do, which is so important to the authenticity about what we do.
No, absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
So your trees arrive on the estate?
Yeah, so the trees arrived. So I mean, that was quite an ordeal actually. So obviously we're being pressured by the nursery at this point. You know, they've had them in cold storage for months.
And for people who don't know, you have to order these way ahead of time. So you went and met the nursery and visited them?
Yeah, so we put in an order like 6 months before. I mean, and that was the only nursery that could hold that amount for us too. Yeah. Like we spoke to a lot more locally, which just couldn't. They were like, look, we'd love to do this for you. We'll have them ready for you in 2 years or next year, which just wasn't quite fair.
I don't think people realise how early this sector is in terms of nurseries being able to grow high quality with provenance at scale and being able to deliver when necessary. We're planning years ahead with some of these projects now and working with the nurseries to equip them to do it. Like you've visited a number of nurseries personally to see how they work and get ready for the trees.
No, exactly that. So yeah, I mean, going back to our plan, so we pressure from the nursery. We need these gone, which is absolutely fine. They need to be a functioning business too, right? And this whole time we're being assured by Welsh Government that we're going to get the contract. It's coming. And so we get the note, trees arrive in on X date, and then Welsh Government put a moratorium or impose a moratorium on all tree planting in Wales at pretty much the same time, which then became slightly stressful because it was like, what do we do now? So we, being proactive about it, we got a local contractor that we use quite a lot who's been absolutely fantastic as well. He's helped us so much.
It shows the importance of local connections.
Massively. So he's put the fencing in there, and Delta Forest, who we found, I mean, another great story, finding Delta Forest, right? So as we're doing the World Service Tree surveys, I just chatting to a guy who's volunteering there that day called Damon, and we just got to chatting, and he was like, oh, you want to plant some trees? Have you got any tree planters yet? I was like, no, actually, we haven't. And he said, have you checked out Delta Forest? Have a look at Delta Forest. And again, the rest is history from there, right? We end up using Delta Forest. So
can you explain to people a little bit about Delta Forest and what they do?
I mean, so yeah, they're really, really good to work with. They do a lot of planting in Iceland. I think at that point with the conversation with them, they were looking, they're based in England, so a couple of them are. So they're very keen to try and find some work closer to home. And yeah, I guess we offer them that.
And it's one of the frustrations I have with the environment sector. We like to still think it's a hobby or a plaything of the retiree. So, let's do some tree planting. You're going to get volunteers in. No. Volunteers will plant 100 trees, then get bored or need lunch or whatever. And Delta Forests are planting how many a day each?
I mean, they must be planting a couple of thousand a day each, yeah.
It is a profession, hard work, skilled.
Hard work, yeah.
And I think the reality is, unless we have professionalised tree planting and deer management and fencing contractors, the environment sector is just playing. Mm-hmm. And yes, there's a role for volunteers to connect people with the environment, but if we don't pay for these services, it's why we didn't touch on it at the start because it's so obvious to us, but it's why all our intern placements are paid, because so much of the environment sector now says, you've got to work for us for a year for nothing before you can even have an opportunity. And my thing is, if the environment sector isn't going to invest in itself, why should anyone else invest in it?
No, massively. I think, a couple of decades ago, maybe you could have got away with that too, but now it's not sustainable for the younger generation. People want to do this as a profession. People want to get into this industry. People do have a genuine care and sense of want to belong to that, and it's not feasible.
No. So we're back on the estate. You've got planters lined up. Everything's ready to go. 90,000 trees arrive, and you're told you can't plant them.
Yeah, told we can't plant them. So let's build a temporary nursery. So, they were also pressuring us as well because they had to be back in Iceland within, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. And they were like, look, we're committed to this. We have to go, which is fine. And, respect that massively.
But in the absence of the contract from Welsh Government, we can't get funded for these at all.
No, not at all.
That is a significant hundreds of thousands of pounds of impact.
And beyond that as well, it's like these trees have just arrived from a nursery. We're going to put them into a temporary home and then let them grow there for a year and then remove them again and put them out in the fields. And then it becomes an issue of transplant shock, massive stress on the actual trees themselves, which is going to cause high failure rates. Yeah. And, that it's not a good move. So, just within a week, managed to get 90,000 trees in a small area, a temporary home. And it was,
Then you had to babysit them for that week.
Babysit them for a week, yeah. Lots of hand watering, because it's quite a dry week as well. So that was
about the only dry week in Wales, right?
Probably. And I think it is like literally 2 days after that, all of a sudden we get the contract from Welsh Government saying you can plant the trees. So back on the phone to Will, can you come back please and get them out? And yeah, they did. I mean, they were working on a short window, and I think he brought a team of 5, and 3 of them got hit by food poisoning that day as well. So he ended up with a team of 2. So I'm then trying to give him contact with people that I know locally that might be able to help him out. He's putting adverts out to try and find people, and it happened, and it all came together, and it's looking fantastic.
So we came and visited with the whole team a few weeks ago, and it is incredibly. It looks like it's such a natural planting. It looks like it's natural regen. So for people who've seen a naturally regenerating woodland, they just go where they want, where the squirrels and the birds and things place the seeds in. It does look so natural and blended into the landscape. Are you happy with the product that's been finished there?
Absolutely. So, I mean, at the start of it, I was a little bit skeptical because, we weren't preparing the land whatsoever, right? We went from no cut kind of...
because
approach.
we wanted the best minimum carbon disturbance, and we wanted the best environmental impact for it.
Exactly. So no machinery. It was all done by hand, all done by notch planting. So a spade in the ground, guy gets the whip out of his bag, sticks it in the ground, and that works really well. But everything tells you, and everybody tells you, this is not the right way to do it. You have to prepare the land. And so, there was...
And that can be quite brutal, right? From either sort of ploughing or cultivating to spraying to extreme impact on the land, the whole range of options.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then you've also got the vigour of the grass growth as well, right? So these trees are 40 to 60 centimetres. The grass has not been grazed or cut for over a year and a half. The grass is vigorous, it's dense.
Previously been fertilised heavily, so that's still down there.
Exactly. So you're thinking, there's a lot of competition in that ground, it's going to be difficult for the trees to establish themselves. And so you walk through at the height of summer and you just couldn't really see much. It was, just grass, and you think, oh no, where are the trees? In fact, when the Welsh Gov representative came out to validate the project, she was like, well, where are they? I was like, no, I promised you they're here, they are here. And
that's a great story as well, that at like an hour's notice one evening we get a call to come and say your inspection's tomorrow. And you just say, sounds great, looking forward to seeing you there.
yeah, and we met, and it was great. She really enjoyed the day. A good chat about what we were doing, kind of thing. I love being able to speak about what we're doing. There's an element of pride in that too. So,
because it's your site, right? You feel that real ownership of this is my estate. This is
exactly that. Yeah. It is, in a way, it is your site. Yeah, everything that you do, you implement. There's so much work that goes on in the background, and you kind of get the nice job of being able to implement all of that hard work. And yeah, I mean that's fantastic. So, but yeah, going back to the grass growth. So you're walking through, you can't see them, and then it got to about a month and a half ago, maybe it was, and the grass started...
September sort of time.
September, yeah. So the grass starts to die back, and it starts to yellow, and all of a sudden you see all of the trees, and it's beautiful because you get the contrast of the yellowing of the grass to the actual tree leaves themselves.
And what species have you got in there?
So we've got 14 different species, so predominantly oak, 4 willows, hazel, alder buckthorn, crabapple.
Love it.
More. And yeah, so we actually done a beat up assessment as well. So we got fillback. So this is mandatory essentially. So if you're getting a 70 to 80% survival rate, that's a win. Like you're doing really well. You just, put 20% back in. And so when we done this the other day, we've only surveyed half the land so far. So when we done this the other day, Phil and I, mostly Phil, walked around, surveyed, and we were looking, so we set a 5 metre radius per survey spot. And what you're looking for is about 4.2 trees per thing. So we called it 4.5. And it was exactly that in every single spot that we counted, which is unbelievable. It's kind of unheard of. He couldn't believe it himself. So it just goes to show that, that industry standard of you must prepare, you must do this, you must do that. I mean, not counting the chickens yet, right? Because we've still got to survey half the site. But just goes to show that it doesn't always have to be.
Well, and a lot of the industry standards are predicated on more of a commercial or a carbon-based approach. And yes, we've got lessons we can learn from that. But we're trying to give nature more of a chance and listen to it a little bit more, be more delicate, be kinder to the environment. And hopefully the more space and time we give it, the better results it provides. When we came back to visit you when we brought the whole team, for me and Dan, it was a really emotional experience because it was the first time. So when we bought Esgair Arth, it was just me and Dan, right? So we go from just me and Dan to 2 and a bit years later, being shown round the estate, not just by you, but by Rowan as well, with 30 other people, and being shown around the estate we bought. That it was like, this is such a complete circle of life for the company. It was really amazing, and hearing your stories about the place and stuff was just unbelievable. So yeah, really a coming of age moment for the company, I think. It's not just about the trees there and wildlife, it's the people as well. So you got tenants on the estate?
Yeah, I got tenants on the estate, yeah.
How important is that to you to be able to provide places for people in rural communities?
No, it's massive. Like it's, they're definitely very appreciative of it as well. So yeah, one of them first conversation was, I love this place. Like it's exactly me. It's rural, so there's no one around it. It's a long walk to the shop, right? But at the same time, that's exactly what she's looking for. She wants that space. She wants.
And there isn't a huge amount of rental properties in the area, right? It's difficult to find.
It's very difficult. So I mean, not Esgair Arth as such, but if you go to Newquay, for example, I think the statistic is that like over 85% of the houses there are second homes, and they're unoccupied. They're not tenanted out. So for people my age, that makes it very, very difficult to live in the area. One, affordable house prices, but two, just to rent a house. They're not there, and it's driven the price up crazily. So doing what we do, yeah, I mean, 2 houses is 2 families essentially, right?
Yeah. So what are you excited about the future of the estate?
A lot. Both projects. I mean, the Wild Service Trees in Wales project still ongoing. We've got another 4 months of that. What's coming next, hopefully, is we're going to plant 3,000 hedgerow trees to fill in the gaps along that new SSI boundary. So the idea was to remove that legacy infrastructure right on the SSI, move it a little bit more up towards the track edge, and allow that area to naturally regenerate.
What I love about what you've done there is it gives us a blueprint or a green print even, and a case study of what can be possible. So you take the learnings and the experiences you've had there, and we take them to B&H or to Invergeldy, where we go from 300 acres to 12,000. There's a huge amount of redundant fencing and infrastructure at Invergeldy that now the sheep have gone. I'd love to take that away because it gives the environment that connectivity and space back to just breathe and live.
No, absolutely. And I think it goes beyond that as well. I think the opportunities that it offers. So, hopefully Esgair Arth becomes a place where you can trailblaze and try new things and kind of be able to implement good, effective management practices like longer in the future, like the inns, for example. There's not much kind of documentation on the effective management of them. There's no one size fits all. So if we can take several different areas and trial different things and find the most effective way of doing that, we could start to, help people write policy, government officials, and hopefully people can then take that on board and do that themselves. And, even outside of us, we could start to really make a difference, like countrywide, nationwide.
Nice. And if the opportunity presented itself, would you like to see the estate expand?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, shoot for the stars, why not, right? Like if we could just do this again, but 2-3 times bigger, why wouldn't you? It's something that, in my opinion, West Wales probably lacks that balance. Farming in general has become a massive cultural thing, which is great, and it's that's offered people their whole livelihoods for a long, long time. I don't necessarily think that's sustainable anymore. Once all the agricultural payments went. So I think
that's a really important point. That if it needed to be propped up by subsidy, like the word subsidy means that you're fixing something that needs support and doesn't work. And I think people forget that if the subsidy payments go and it isn't economically viable, then it never was.
No, exactly that, yeah. And you probably need to divert into a different way. And it seems like from what we're doing and seeing how this works, that it's probably like genuinely a route out, not necessarily a route out, but a different route to take. Like it is functioning, it does work, and it can work for you as well. It's not explicitly for us, it's for everyone that wants to jump on board on it.
Yeah, nice. And what about you personally? If we were sat here in 5 years' time, what do you hope's happened?
Again,
and everything?
So the Trailblaze thing, both projects a success, which is has to be that, right? Has to be that. Failure is not an option. And then, I mean, something that I would absolutely love to see, that I know we've toyed with the idea about, is it becomes like an education hub, a hub for people to come from near and far, like whether they're from disadvantaged backgrounds, affluent backgrounds, doesn't really matter. People that just enjoy that space for what it is. Like it becomes a biodiversity hotspot from the woodland creation, right? We've created a big woodland, biodiversity's, grown exponentially. And people that want to engage with that come from distances to come and see that. So an ecotourism hotspot with that, I guess, as well. But yeah, the education thing is definitely important. So coming from where I came from to get to this point, I just feel like if more people were able to engage in that kind of activity, then they would understand and, casting it far and wide, and all of a sudden more and more people are interested. It fosters a sense of their own love and affinity to that, and that builds. Again, going back to the woods of Ben, there used to be a project where there was kids from inner city London that would come, and it would be half kids from really affluent areas and kids from disadvantaged areas, and the affluent kids would pay for their accommodation for when they came down, and they'd come down, and regardless of all that, like seeing them engage with it was amazing. So you get kids from inner city London that have never seen a cow before or something like that, and you sort of think, wow, look at this.
So with our intern program for this year is out and about, on some of the roles we're advertising and the opportunities to be rangers in some of these places, so entry routes in. For people who might not have thought about estate management or working on estate and come from a completely different background, what advice would you give them about opportunities of working in and around conservation?
I mean, go for it, like absolutely go for it. I think that we're kind of redefining that word conservation, right? Like as a definition, it's preservation and management of biodiversity and natural resources, and we're not aiming for that preservation anymore, right? We're aiming to support natural succession, which is kind of what I think, from my own personal belief, is that it should be. Studying conservation in university, I got to year 2 and I thought, this just isn't it. It's like we're talking in one module about climate crisis, and the next one we're talking about preserving the exact thing that's causing that.
Just doesn't make sense.
So it just doesn't make sense. It's completely contradictory. So let's do something different. So anybody that wants to get involved with that is, jump on board, put all your energy into it. But I think you're going to have to want it this time around, right? Like really want it. If we're getting 1,000 applicants, like you've got to stand out, right?
Yeah. Someone told me the other day that our approach to conservation is like heavy metal conservation, taking it up a notch and really meaning it, which I love. Lyall, it's been an absolute privilege and pleasure to hear your story and hear you share what we put out into the world so early on, how it was received by you, and then seeing you come into the business and have an amazing impact. Abby's sat in the room like beaming about your story, and so many of us are. You're an absolute superstar, and we love having you in Esgair Arth. Thank you very much for coming in and doing the podcast.
No, thank you. No, I absolutely love being here too. So thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.